An interesting thing has happened in the world of technological disruption and the foremost innovators in the world. Some people who think that they are the most disruptive, and usually are, occasionally find out that they're not, and then they are caught by surprise and come up with very, very ridiculous types of arguments that are actually just them being caught off guard that the technology they are working on is not as advanced as they thought, and these people adapt quickly, so they adjust. So just take transportation, individual vehicle transportation as an example. Internal combustion engines improve at about 1 to 1.5% a year. They're still improving. In fact, the rate of improvement might be improving slightly because they're facing direct competition from electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, however, are going to win that particular battle for 98% of all use cases because EVs improve at 7 to 8% a year. And once the battery becomes a small enough component of the car's cost, then the price drop of electric vehicles will not be as steep. Very similar to how when the electronic components of a PC become so inexpensive, the rate of price decline stalls because there's still the low-tech component, the chassis, the transformer, the ports, the keyboard, etc. So Elon Musk manufactures EVs. It's not his only business, but it is his primary business. And Tesla has risen to the point where it's about 800 billion in market cap and was briefly above 1 trillion. It moves around between 800 billion and 1 trillion. That is despite the fact that EVs are still only 17 to 18% of new car sales, and that percentage is rising even as there is more replacement and cumulative sales of EVs. So he became the richest man in the world mostly because of Tesla, even though he has succeeded in other businesses as well. But there is a higher order disruption above EVs that was overdue, but then caught up to the trend line due to an external shock event. And that is video conferencing. Now, anyone who is a longtime futurist and keen observer of technological disruption recalls that during the dot-com era, the 1999 to 2000 period, it was said that pretty soon there will be so much video conferencing over the internet that many people will be able to work with each other on a decentralized location basis. And therefore things like offices, as well as even satellite locations and collaborating with people in other countries will become commonplace. Now, this did not happen as soon as they thought. There were a lot of video conferencing companies in the 2000s. WebEx was acquired by Cisco Systems for $3.2 billion, which was a lot more back then than it is today. You also had Cisco with their own video conferencing solution, and they acquired a Norwegian company called Tandberg for $3 billion, also in the late 2000s. 2009 or 10. But Cisco's video conferencing solution was very expensive and it failed because there was not enough internet bandwidth and it required a $300,000 initial cost outlay for any corporation that wanted to have a video conferencing room. So that failed. And video conferencing remained nascent for many years. Then we had the COVID-19 crisis and people had to work over video conferencing. And then those technologies caught up in many ways. And the innate improvement of video conferencing is in fact 10 to 12% a year because that includes bandwidth improvements, camera improvements, and free software like Zoom being economically viable. And this work from home revolution seemed like a big surprise, but it was in fact overdue from the perspective of people from the 1999-2000 period. And it is the higher order disruption. And what I mean by that is it is dematerialized. It is replacing driving with no driving. So an EV is driving with an electric vehicle, more advanced than an internal combustion engine, of course. But imagine not having to drive at all and cutting out all of that transit time, whether commuting, whether going somewhere for a meeting, etc. For many people, this is 10 to 15 hours a week, as well as all the secondary activities like polishing your shoes if you're a man, or doing your makeup if you're a woman, or having enough office clothes versus not. So we're going to go to a clip of Elon Musk objecting to work from home because his primary technology, where he makes most of his money, is directly under attack because the people who are most likely to buy Tesla cars are also people who, for the most part, can do their jobs remotely. People with highly paid desk jobs. Attorneys, corporate executives, software developers, and so forth. So we go to this video clip from Elon Musk.
Believer that people are more productive when they're in person, and really, man, the whole sort of work from home thing. It's like, I think it's Look, there are some exceptions, but I kind of think that the whole notion of work from home is a bit like the fake Marie Antoinette quote, "Let them eat cake." Mm-hmm. It's like really you're going to work from home and you're going to make everyone else who made your car come work in the factory. You're going to make the people who make your food that gets delivered that they can't work from home. The people that come fix your house, they can't work from home, but you can. Does that seem morally right? That's messed up.
You see it as a moral issue?
Yes.
I mean, I see it more as just
it's a productivity issue, but it's also a moral issue. People should get off the goddamn moral high horse with the work from home bullshit. Because they're asking everyone else to not work from home while they do.
And yet
it's wrong.
There's still pushback, by the way. It's still going on. This battle is still happening. I mean, leaders of organizations, and I speak to plenty of them, I want people back. I want people back. 3 days a week, they're still battling. It's not clear that it's ever going to change. People are not coming back 5 days a week.
The laptop class is living in la la land, okay? As I said, you can't, but look at the cars. Are people working from home here? Of course not. So the people were, building cars, servicing the cars, building houses, fixing houses, making the food, making all the things that people consume. It's messed up to assume that yes, they have to go to work, but you don't. How is that? It's not just a productivity thing. I think it's morally wrong.
Although productivity is definitely impacted too, and the ability of people to learn, I mean, on and on. Listen, I agree,
look, people will disagree with me about this, but it's like.
So if you want to work at Tesla, you want to work at SpaceX, you want to work at Twitter, you got to come into the office every day.
Yes, I mean, like I'm not saying. I'm saying like, look, put 40 hours in, and frankly, it doesn't even need to be like, Monday through Friday. You could work Monday through Thursday, and I'm also not saying no one should take. I mean, I think people should take vacations. Like I work 7 days a week, but I'm not expecting others to do that.
Now look at how weak his arguments were, even though he's right about most other things. He started stuttering when coming up with an excuse on the fly, and he tried to make it a moral argument. And then he tried to use his anecdote of factory workers, who obviously have to work in a factory, as the norm and stretch that out to everyone. A moral argument that, hey, some people lower in the skill ladder cannot work from home, therefore people who can work from home should not. You could make that same argument about people who get to work indoors in air-conditioned offices versus people who are outdoors, whether the weather is good or not. You could make that argument for healthcare. In the United States, how come good health plans are tied to employment and people lower in the skill ladder do not have a health plan associated with their employment? You could make that argument relative to even educational level. How come people who are higher in intelligence or higher in productive output get paid more versus those who don't? This is a very, very uncharacteristic amount of indignation from Elon Musk, because usually he's the disruptor. When there's a higher order disruption that is cannibalizing his disruption, then he comes up with a very weak argument. Now, since that time, he's probably thought about it some more and has a better argument, and or has recognized this reality and pivoted, because another one of his companies, Starlink, which gives you a high bandwidth internet connection independent of your location, in fact directly cannibalizes Tesla. Starlink is one of the most work-from-home, telework enabling technologies out there, and anyone who is likely to use Starlink is absolutely the core audience that Tesla is marketed to. So his Starlink product from his SpaceX company is directly cannibalizing his Tesla cars to some extent. Now, he's probably figured that out over the course of the few months since that video clip aired and is redeploying his assets accordingly, and that's why you probably won't hear him rail against work from home that much anymore either. But this was an example of someone who thought he was the highest order disruptor, and for a time he was, being demoted to second place behind an even higher order disruption, and it is higher order because it is dematerialized. It is something that can diffuse to hundreds of millions of people immediately. Tesla cars have to be made in a factory, so even if everyone could afford one, they would have to produce that many, whereas Zoom type interaction can be used by anyone with an existing internet connection, whether on a PC or on a phone. And it is more deflationary because by cutting out the commute to work, you are freeing a lot of highly productive people, highly paid people from 3 hours a day of commute time. This can be the source of many other things that they do. They can have a second gig so that they are not dependent on just one employer. Parents can spend more time with their children. Gee, people never mention that when they indicate that they're opposed to work from home. It's the difference between having a hobby versus not having a hobby. It's the difference between single people having time to date versus not having time to date. It's the difference between an elderly person still being able to work in the workforce because they can still do a desk job, but they may not be able to drive on the highway anymore because an older person's ability to drive a car on the highway goes away a lot sooner than their ability to work at a desk job. A lot of retired people want to be productively engaged part-time if they can work from home. And it is absolutely the natural progression of the internet. And so it's surprising that someone who is one of the greatest internet entrepreneurs ever, if you go back to his PayPal days as a pioneer of making payments over the internet, to his SpaceX Starlink days today, he's one of the greatest internet entrepreneurs ever. Yet he opposes work from home because it's cannibalizing Tesla cars and he wants to sell more cars, whereas work from home is reducing the demand of cars and is affecting EVs more than it's affecting internal combustion engine cars. Because remember, the EV buyer is technologically advanced and therefore, by definition, under the first principles as detailed in my Atom publication, is more likely to be someone who can do most or all of their work via video conferencing, thereby reducing their driving by a lot. My own driving has fallen by about 2/3 versus what it was in 2019, and that is true for most people in Silicon Valley. So this is the one thing Elon Musk is wrong about. Since that time, he's probably adjusted accordingly and is not going to fight the first principles of technology and economics, which he understands better than virtually everyone. Everyone makes mistakes from time to time, but this is something he was wrong about because he was caught off guard. Now, if you like this type of content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, and thank you very much for watching.